Crisis.
Hey, welcome everybody to episode 7 of the Mid-Geek Crisis. This is Joe.
Pedro, cautious. Sorry, a little distracted right there at the beginning.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. So, welcome back, everybody, to another episode. We are fresh back from the holiday break.
That's right. Thanksgiving weekend.
Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 3-day extravaganza.
Did you do a lot of shopping? I regretfully did not do much shopping. I thought I would do a lot more.
I told myself I wasn't going to, and I didn't technically. At my job, at my day job, not this job, I was given the keys to the castle a little bit. They were like, "Hey, we're a small company, so they were like, hey, we need to pick up some new equipment. Why don't you? Here's the company card. Go pick up a bunch of new stuff." Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
I was like, rock on. So they gave me a shopping list, and I spent Friday. I picked out monitors and.
Is there anything better than shopping with someone else's money?
Right? That's what I was telling everybody. It's funny because my mother-in-law does a charity event every year, and the whole purpose of it is everyone donates a $30 or more bottle of wine or whiskey.
Oh.
And then they do a raffle at this particular event. But a lot of people just like to donate money. So $30, $40, $50 a piece. And so she had a big hunk of money, and then so she had to go to the store to buy the bottles instead of giving money. So then she goes, because they raise more money that way.
Sure.
So she went into the store with like, $1,000 or something like that of not her money, and gets to
and she's like, what's the oldest, most beautiful whiskey you have?
They want to keep it within a $30, $40 range. So then they've like, oh yes. So all of these like, hipsters in their like 20s that all know about whiskey, right? Like they all know about whiskey.
Curled up.
Oh yeah, there you go. They're whiskey, and they all were like running around the stores, kind of, oh, this is great. It's like a single malt, and this and that. It's an American.
And I imagine in Texas you've got like the world's greatest liquor store, right? It's probably 12 or 13 acres long.
We have a company called Specs here in the US that's local, and it's absolutely huge. It is the size of a Walmart.
The Costco for booze.
The Costco for booze. I mean, they've got a humidor and wine and beer and booze and cheeses and all sort of
cheeses.
Yeah, they have like cheeses and olives, all the like bar food kind of thing.
It seems like such a different. I don't imagine Texans as being like, "Oh, would you like some cheese with your beverage?"
Yeah, they got like sausages and cheeses and olives and all the
sausage makes sense.
Yeah, so all of the like the little crackers and saltines and all.
Credites.
Yeah, so that was one of the things when I lived up north where you're at. Was interesting going to like a store to buy booze, and it was like, well, we sell booze here but no beer. Beer's at the grocery store. Also wine, so we have wine and liquor but no beer.
Yep.
And no mixers, which I always thought was interesting.
And only between the hours of 1 and 2 p.m. on Tuesdays can you buy alcohol up here. So because we shut it down before noon on Sundays. It's no booze after 6.
Oh, that's right.
It's like real strict blue laws up here. Not as strict as some other states, but New York has.
The weird thing here in Texas, of course, is it's I think after 10 a.m. or something like that is when you can actually buy booze. And then on Sundays we don't sell liquor. You can buy beer all you want, but no liquor. Liquor stores are completely closed. So we still got those religious blue laws that kind of cater to everything. I think those are silly, but that's a whole other subject.
That's a whole other subject.
Yeah.
For our drinking podcast, which is starting up next. No, I'm kidding.
So
this is already a drinking
that's
podcast.
What I did for my Black Friday and Cyber Mondays. I picked up a bunch of stuff. That I did pick up little things. I did some kids Christmas shopping. I did see some fun gifts for the kiddos, and I will reveal those when we get closer to the Christmas area. So
you might need to edit this out, but I think you need to move your mic a little closer to your face as you're fading out as you're turning towards the camera there.
There we go.
Yeah, there's your sultry, sexy voice. I love it. Just when you turned away, I just couldn't hear you there.
we're gonna get this placement better for our new audio listeners. If we've got anybody that's listening on audio, welcome. We got the situation under control last week, and we are now on Spotify and soon to be the Google Play Store. I think we're already there. I'm not sure yet. We are on iTunes, and we are on Podseed. So we've got a website.
I've actually listened to us on the podcast. We sound pretty good, and it's nice. So, rate us. If you take the time to listen to us, you can listen to us on podcast now. So if you're driving and you can't watch us, and you miss our voice, definitely check us out on podcasts, which is exciting. It's nice to be out there.
It really is. I didn't think about it, but I started listening to our own audio recently as well, and I was kind of going through how we sound, and we're not bad. So anything that we do visually, of course, like me pointing to what I'm pointing to right now, I'll try to describe. And this is I'm drinking a nice brown fluid.
That's right.
A single malt, and
I'm just drinking sparkling water, as I tend to do here.
And it's in a 20-sided dice glass, eight ball or high ball. No, what kind of glass is this? A tumbler. It's a tumbler.
Tumbler. There you go.
So yeah. Well,
speaking of sound, right? You may have noticed if you're a listener, a common listener, we have changed our theme music. We know a band up here in Central New York, Syracuse. They're called Heretofore. They are an adventure rock band. Pretty cool, sweet sound of their own. They play some sweet sounds, and they're also gamers. So
right.
In talking to them, they offered us some theme music, and we decided to use it. So thank you to Heretofore. We'll put the link in the YouTubes.
Absolutely. It'll be in the YouTube. It'll be in the podcast notes as well, as I fill those in as best as I can. But
if not, you can find them Heretofore at .bandcamp.com. It's a simple Heretofore on Bandcamp. You can find them there.
Yeah.
Buy their music if you like it or if you're interested in it. They also have some YouTube videos. We should probably link their YouTube channel.
Right, and I'll spell it out for you. It's here, so HERE, and then TO, and then FORE, FORE.
Right.
So Heretofore music .bandcamp.com.
Rock it out. Thank you to Galen and Mark for that.
Galen, thank you so much. So let's kick it off with some of the news. This episode, I don't want it to run long, but we do have quite a bit to talk about, considering it's a pretty heavy news week for sure.
Yep.
One of them that I guess hit today that we're filming a little later than normally would, because it's Tuesday as opposed to Monday that we normally film. And our wonderful game that is Red Dead Redemption has kicked off its beta for its online. And so this is going to be an interesting scenario because they had no news about this before it launched. Everyone just knew that some sort of online component.
And our friend who worked at Rockstar, I guess he signed some sort of secrecy agreement because he would refuse to talk about it no matter how many times I bugged him. So
right, yeah, we
hammered him. I bugged him and teased him as much as I could.
We did. I think in chat and a couple other places we were like, hey, when he's like, nope, hush, and that's credit to
change the topic.
Yeah, no, credit to them, man. They loyalty. That's good. Absolutely. So from what we're seeing here is it kicked off today, and it's weird. It's got a little bit of like horse theft and multiplayer modes that
it's like a little Grand Theft Auto Online.
Yeah, right. So we obviously knew that was going to be the case because they really tested their Grand Theft Auto Online engine, and I'm sure all they did was kind of bring it over. But one of the big ones, or the big news, is there is a Battle Royale mode, which of course there is, and I think we've beat this horse dead over and over.
I honestly don't think. I try to consume enough game media, so I have some stuff to talk about here. I don't know that people are talking enough about the impact of Fortnite on the industry. We're seeing it everywhere, and I don't think people are talking enough about it. I think you're not going to put an online game anymore. There's not going to be an online game anymore without Battle Royale. I love doing predictions, so that's a prediction from my perspective.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this industry, just the multiplayer in general. A game like Red Dead Redemption getting multiplayer is big, considering that this is a franchise that didn't have much before, and it's also a franchise that's not even PC centric.
It was a weird sort of right, because there wasn't the first one. There was like it was very, I want to say barren, but they found you and they would shoot you.
Yeah,
kind of like it was just a deathmatch kind of thing. They would just find you and shoot you in the original, right?
Right.
It had an online component. I tried it for a day and did not like it.
But there's other games that have had kind of this like forced multiplayer that I feel that gets lots of manpower invested. Two games in particular come to mind, and one I know you haven't played because you're not a Sony guy, but Uncharted. The Uncharted series is known for their fantastic storytelling, but they also have a multiplayer aspect, which I guess people really wanted, but I don't exactly hear anything about it. Like, I hear people did play it for a little bit and they enjoy some of it, but it's just a game that's not catered to the fast-paced movement of multiplayer. Yeah. Another one is Tomb Raider. The Tomb Raider games, the more recent ones, they all have a multiplayer aspect to it as well. And
wait, so the second and third one have multiplayer?
Yeah, there's a multiplayer aspect to the Tomb Raider games.
And the first one was terrible.
You didn't like the first?
Boring. It was boring. It was just like death matches. It was basic PvP without Tomb Raider. Like, it was just
yeah.
Reskin death matches or capture the flag.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the bonus content for any type of pre-order stuff is always like, get this cool axe for multiplayer, or get this, whatever for multiplayer directly at GameStop or only at GameStop. That's the kind of stuff that they're really giving you now, because multiplayer is the only thing where stats really matter for the rest of the world. So again, those are two games that had that forced multiplayer. I'm not saying Red Dead has that. It's just, this is a very story-driven game, just like Grand Theft Auto was. But world that people, I guess, want to explore with other individuals. So I know that Grand Theft Auto had its controversy with multiplayer for a while. They had a lot of like the money aspect. The economy was very broken in the game.
Yeah. A lot of exploits. They still kept the money.
Which is interesting for a game called Grand Theft Auto, because it's all about theft and somehow or another you're breaking. So like the irony of doesn't fail you. So same thing here.
There's a challenge, right? Because you're creating an online community, and if some people get away with cheating, it becomes a community of cheaters, right? So I don't know. I found that the online community at Grand Theft Auto, from my experience, it's extremely toxic, very unhelpful, and cash rules everything.
Online community that's toxic? I've never heard of such a thing.
But like League of Legends toxic and now Overwatch toxic, right? There's different
levels for sure. Absolutely. Fortnite is revolutionizing the online industry. We talked about it on the Call of Duty episode, and how Call of Duty had to kind of restructure and became a battle royale.
Call of Duty revolutionized the multiplayer world arena, right?
So it's like what is it? The dragon eating its own tail?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What's going on here?
Gotta stay relevant.
Gotta stay relevant. And Call of Duty, for sure, that was the game that revolutionized online shooters. I think back to the day when I played online shooters pre-Halo on PC. It was Doom, Quake, and Unreal. And I used to play Quake 3. I wouldn't say pro, just competitively would be the proper term. And I won my fair share of tournaments and here and there, and it was the fast-paced, twitchy, rocket jump, bouncing around. And I feel those games have gone away, and we've now gone for more precision. Like, you're all about the specific weapon and your loadout, and that was what Call of Duty brought to the table. These specific loadouts, and it was after
and leveling up, right?
So leveling up. So you had Counter-Strike. I won't forget them in this timeline of shooters.
People still play Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike, 1.6, and then it went to Source, and it got brought back, and people still play it, and they love it. The gameplay that is Counter-Strike, that kind of revolutionized the way certain things work. Now we've got a whole new revolution with Fortnite and the Battle Royale, which is, it's not a first-person shooter. It's a third-person shooter. It's a over-the-shoulder type of shooter. And games like PUBG, which, again, I'm going to say they still weren't the first ones. There were still other ones before PUBG that did the Battle Royale, but Fortnite perfected it. And I'm putting quotes up in the air for people that are listening, and because it is still in beta and it's still being changed up. And I think they leave themselves with a lot of leeway that they can change the game at any point in time. And that's what's, I think, fantastic. I know I didn't realize that Fortnite was hated as much as it is.
Yeah.
until I was reading some, forums and whatnot, and they really don't like. There's a lot of people that don't like Fortnite. That's a dumb game. It's silly. And whatever your feelings are for the game, haters gotta hate, right? But whatever your feelings are for the game, I've definitely put in a few hours into the game, and I've enjoyed it, and I don't see anything wrong with it in any way, shape, or form.
Every time I play it, I enjoy it. I mean, sometimes I hate the ragamuffins I'm forced to play with.
Right.
But I enjoy the gameplay for the most part. I would enjoy it a lot more if, I consistently had 3 to 5 friends on that we could always do these missions and things together. But
right.
That's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's. I'm often surprised. I think it should be made fun of, right? It's at the top of the hill. It's like how the Yankees are made fun of, right? When they used to be top of the hill, or how they make fun of the Patriots, right? We all hate the Patriots because they're the best, right? And that's where Fortnite is as well. Right. Patriot is a hockey team, right? That's
It's a soccer team with cricket bats.
Cricket bats. That cheat. Mm-hmm. We know they cheat. To all the Patriots fans out there, we are kidding. Please do not find me and kill me. That would be nice. Anyway, Fortnite, of course, Fortnite Redemption Battle Royale. It should be interesting. I think one of the things
we are hours into filming this. We are hours into the turning on of the multiplayer. So we will see how this goes. I'm sure tomorrow there'll be all sorts of videos.
Great. We'll talk about it next week for sure.
For sure, absolutely. And I'm going to pop it in and play it. Since I haven't gone too far into the story, I'm still going to. I feel that's kind of nice. It's 2 modes. It's almost like Fortnite, right? You got Save the World and you've got Battle Royale, and I'm going to be able to do that.
I'd be curious as to how well it takes, right? Because Fortnite, I think a lot of its popularity is that it. I'm going to choose my words carefully here. Is that it looks safe for kids, right? So Fortnite is an easier game for a parent to sort of say, "Oh, it's cartoony and looks ridiculous, and they're building things." While Red Dead Redemption is clearly, these cowboys are clearly shooting each other in the face. So I think it'll be. I don't think you're going to see the same explosion in popularity. I don't think you'll see the population shift. I think the 12-year-olds are going to stick. The younger generation, I should say, the younger generation of gamers are going to stick with Fortnite because their parents allow them to play Fortnite. They're they're not going to look over their shoulder.
It's free.
What's this violent game you're playing?
What's interesting? Free. Well, right, it's not, but it is. So
if there are any parents that listen to this show and you have kids who are of Fortnite age, count up how much money you've actually spent on the game, because I talked to some other parents in my peer group, and they know their 11-year-old, and they're getting hit up every week for $10 from their 11 and 12-year-olds, and Fortnite is taking that money. I've seen them doing yard work for that money. So some of the parents are getting these kids to work for it. But
incentivize it. Absolutely, incentivize that. Right, make it a chart. Put a chart up.
I'm gonna sound like an old man for a minute here, but I worked for my money, so I had comic books, so I had hard things to put on the shelf.
You got to buy that new skin. You got
to buy that ephemeral skin that's not going to be worth anything.
Right. Well, we say that now, but hear me out. There will be a skin marketplace in the future.
Wait, I need you to say that again so that I can record.
So this is a prediction. There will be a auction house / skin marketplace for sure.
That's dirty.
Do
they discontinue skins? I know they've had limited edition like NFL skins, but I just assumed they'd bring them back. But
they do bring them back. They sometimes do. But a perfect example of the skin that goes for a lot of money right now on a market that really shouldn't happen is you can sell your account, right? Like you have a bunch of people that sell the account. The Galaxy S9 Note, when it launched, it got a specific Fortnite exclusive skin. So the only way to get that skin is you have to log into Fortnite and play a certain amount, certain like 4 matches with a Galaxy Note, and then that unlocks the Galaxy Note skin. And it's a very specific skin, and you can't get it unless you have that specific device.
What a weird cross promotion.
Right. So there are people out there that say, "Hey, I don't play the game, but give me $200 and you can log in and we'll play, 4 matches. I'll play 4 matches and they'll unlock the skin, and then we'll log out."
So there are people out there charging money, and there are people out there paying them and giving them their account information to.
Yes, absolutely. Isn't that delicious? Like in some form of like
So how do I start up this business? Because I'm wondering, I'm $200 and someone's account sounds like a real good deal.
Oh, that's such a good deal. Such a good deal.
That's some bad internet behavior. We should.
It is. Don't condone that.
I don't. I want to give credit to Illogical Mods. I guess he's the one who did the data digging on his Twitter feed regarding the Fortnite redemption, the battle royale, and that kind of blew up. All the news media picked it up. So, when I can and I get it, we find the source of folks who found this information. He's the one who put up, or they are the one who put up the pictures.
Right.
And one more note about Fortnite. I don't know the Wreck-It Ralph. I don't know if that's going to go on.
So this is an interesting one as well, and this goes back to what we were talking about, how Red Dead Redemption is a game that obviously clearly has violence and you're shooting people in its Grand Theft Auto with cowboys. I mean,
you're not going to see Woody show up in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Right.
Maybe.
So, again, this is now the second time that Disney has had a cross promotion with Fortnite, and before even our show started, when Infinity War came out, there was a cross promotion where they had a whole mode, a Thanos mode, where it was Thanos would launch, you'd kill him, or you pick up the Infinity Gauntlet, then you'd run around the map with the Infinity Gauntlet,
crush everybody,
and then if you kill that person, you'd pick it up as well, and then so on. That's a big deal because it's a Marvel license and a Disney license, a Disney property, in a game like Fortnite, yet again with guns. Shooting people. I mean, the guns are actual real guns, right? Like they're not like plasma rifles.
No, they're scars. They're assault rifles
and assault rifles and
military style sniper rifles,
double Desert Eagles, and all that kind of stuff. Which, in turn, which is a funny story about this is, as soon as the NFL one, when we talked about that, happened, people were dressing up as NFL players, and not only were they dressing up as NFL players, they were dressing up as NFL players with specific jerseys. A good example was people were walking around with a Patriots jersey with the number of Aaron Hernandez.
And then everyone was killing them?
Well, Aaron Hernandez was the murderer.
Oh my God.
That got tried for murder and then was jailed and then killed himself. So he's running around as that. Or they would put themselves in a Buffalo Bills jersey and put the OJ number on.
That's good.
And run around.
Oh, the internet's they're so clever. That's like
so
I salute you, internet.
Yeah. So you think of any like NFL player that's been charged with a crime and they ran around and like trolled everybody with that number.
I wonder if you were sitting in the NFL executive boardroom and they look at each other, all these 50-year-old white hairs, and they look at each other and they go, no one thought of this? No one thought that maybe we've got some people who are bad? no one thought that these jerseys should be turned off or something?
I don't know. But so, yes, there are videos out there running online with a Patriot.
Was Aaron Hernandez killing everybody he could
find? Yeah, absolutely. There's videos of like, you blowing people away. I'm like, oh, my God.
The guy with he had the brain?
He had the brain thing, and then he committed suicide.
Yeah. All right.
So it really bad, really sad, folks. Don't play football.
But again, Disney is happily saying, yeah, take our properties and stuff.
Right. So again, this past week we had Wreck-It Ralph 2. Wreck It. What is it? Wreck
the Internet.
Breaks the Internet. Is the I guess the name of the movie, and cross promotion, and he's in the game. So there are points in the game where you can walk around, and first off, they gave away a free dance. So they gave away a free Wreck-It Ralph dance from a specific Wreck-It Ralph chant that he does. They gave it away for free. It was later on they might charge for it, but they had $0 or 0 coins for it.
Neat.
But not only that is once they unlocked that, no one knew. You ran around. There's a specific point in the map where you're at a drive-in theater, and if you stand there long enough, Wreck-It Ralph will show up in the movie and kind of wave at you and be like, "Hey, I'm here," and then he runs off, which is very just minute. Just a small little cameo, but it's the idea that he's game jumping, right? Like he's going from game to game. So Wreck-It Ralph is in the game.
Wow. That's one of those smart cross promotions that I really appreciate.
Right. I mean, it's an internet game. He's on the internet. All of a sudden, he's
breaking the internet. I wonder if he will actually break the internet and be in the game like Thanos style.
I would love a Wreck-It Ralph mode where some sort of like object, you pick it up and all of a sudden it's like, I can wreck it, and he just runs around. That would I would jump in and play that mode all day.
It would be fun.
It would be fun.
That's good. So that concludes the Fortnite portion of our Fortnite.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry. Again, it's hard to say. It's hard to avoid it, but there it is.
So I want to switch gears very quickly here to a game that's near and dear to my heart, Civilization. Right, so I'm significantly aged when it comes to video games, and I remember sneaking in Civilization games on the old high school Apple computer. Right, very old. And so I recently installed Civilization 6. I had put it off, and Steam, of course, had a sale that I could not say no to. It was perfect timing as I was looking to reward myself.
So we've got to give a little backstory on this, and we're not going to give full backstory. But my friend Pedro here set a milestone for himself.
Mm-hmm.
He had to do a specific task, and if he created or did hit that specific task, he would then treat himself to Civ 6. He's purchased other games between this, this particular tantric style of
self-denial,
for sure. But Civ 6, he knows how weak he is. The flesh is weak, and he knows how weak he is to the Civ franchise.
So guess how many? I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who sniff at my numbers, but as a gainfully employed individual with a kid and a family and a social life and a D&D campaign and all this stuff, guess how many hours I have in Civ 5?
Well, look, I know how bad. Like, you're asking the wrong person, because I know how bad WoW players can be. So I want to say maybe 200.
4,200. So I knew that if I
4,000,
like that's like 100 days, dude. That's more than 100 days.
Oh,
I know that's like 200 days, right? So.
Oh, I gotta.
I have almost a year of my life just playing one of the civilizations.
Yeah, it's a 2.7 days.
2,700 days.
No, 2.7. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, hold on. Yes. Minutes, hours, right? Hours. Yes, 166 days.
Mm-hmm. So that's a half of my life playing Civ 5, and then if you put in probably half a year playing Civ 4, half a year playing Civ 3, I've probably spent 3 or 4 years just playing. If I go back and look at my life, it's probably 3 or 4 years. If you did like a Excel bar sheet.
I'm sure the older versions of the game where you were less, encumbered with child and marriage, I'm sure you had even more hours.
More hours, yeah. I wasted youth on the older versions.
I know Civ 4 was the last one I played.
So that's a good one. Civ 5 was great too. So knowing my weakness and knowing how consumed I am by Civilization 6. In fact, it's up on my screen right now, and it's hard not to just kick it off right now. I set a milestone, and I said that once I did it, I will buy it. And then the Steam gods must have smiled down on me because I hit the milestone, and a day later, Civ 6 was on sale because they're launching DLC soon, and it was on sale at a rate that I was like, let's go.
So here's a question, just because I haven't personally played it, and I have it on the Switch, and I haven't played it yet, so I will.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how it's going to go on the Switch.
I know. I mean, I'm curious too. But my question to you is, and again, when you bought it, did you buy the base game, or did you buy with up to the DLC up to now?
I bought up to the DLC up to now.
Okay, perfect. So from what I've heard, and again, this is because you're late to this train. Civ 6 had a lot of problems when it launched, and the DLC fixed a lot of that. So,
that's Rise and Fall, yep.
So what you have now is a better version of the game than when it launched. So what you're playing now is definitely better.
So I mean, that's no different from any other video game cycle, right? That's let's be honest. You buy a game out of the box.
We need a timer or a ding every time we hit like a specific like cliche in gaming.
Maybe I can have like a number of episodes without a cliche, and I'll just pull it off back to zero every time.
Yeah.
So I'm in love with it already. I mean, I played 4 or 5 civilizations, and the way I consume this game is I'll play it. I'll play ancient and I'll play classical, and I'll get up to a certain point and I'll restart, right? Because I'm trying to learn how to play it and figure out what the proper tasks are to get to modern age in good shape and things like that. And it's fantastic, right? So I love it. It's got all the history, all the stuff I enjoy, all the it's even got maybe too much of the sort of micromanaging things that you can really get compulsive about. And what I love about the series, really compulsive about it. But one of the interesting things that I find is, if you don't know the Civilization series, every civilization has sort of a historical leader. So
right. So my favorite is Gandhi.
Gandhi, yep, Gandhi's still in this game. He still makes an appearance.
And if you don't know, for those listening and have never listened or played the Civilization game, let's give a little recap on the Civilization game. Civilization game is it's a strategy game. It's like an overworld strategy game where you're
4X world building game, right?
Right. So it's a world building game. The whole purpose of it is you start at a specific time, and then you kind of build up the civilization. So you could choose like America, or you can choose like India or whatever, whatever, Russia, and then you build on it, and then that world leader kind of becomes like the not a god, but like a
well, each of your world leaders provides a sort of different set of bonuses to your nation. So each nation has access to all the same technologies and all the same resources and the same map.
Some people are spiked at a different point. So like
so Americans might make more money while the Russians have better military. So it's simple like that, right? And it gets more granular than what I just said, but definitely that's the basic concept. You pick the Americans and you have a path to victory. You can go against that path, right? You can decide not to go that way. It's a little bit harder, but the Americans have a clear advantage if they go one way. The Russians haven't. So that's just the basic. And Sid Meier, I mean, he's a household name in video game world because of the Civilization series.
Right.
One of the things that I love about it is the historical context, right? So that there's always more details than you need, right? So it has wonders of the world you could build, and if you build a wonder of the world, it gives you like a little historical snippet about it, and you can sort of learn things. A lot of my historical knowledge is from Civilization and video games in general, right? Which is really important. So this one, what I find most interesting, right? So the very first Civilization, if I'm remembering right, I didn't look it up, I swear. Your American leader was Abraham Lincoln, right? So presidential pillar. You look at Russia, back then it was Stalin, right? So a fascist autocrat, right? Right? And
different times, man.
Different times. And India was Gandhi, right? What the hell? So you go, and as you sort of march through all the Civilizations games, they kind of changed the leaders here and there, right? So like at one point, I believe they got rid of Abraham Lincoln and they brought in George Washington.
Right.
And they definitely got rid of Stalin, and what they went with was like Catherine the Great or Peter the Great, right? So they brought in different Russian leaders at different time periods. So
no Gorbachev yet, right?
I have, I'm sure maybe I haven't seen one. I don't think there's a Gorbachev, but yeah, that would be an interesting choice actually. And one of the things that I find interesting is what leaders they picked. So in the very first one, you had Julius Caesar as the Romans, right? And I believe in this one you've got a different Caesar. It's I forget the name, but it's a different Roman leader from historical era.
So again, something that we have to touch upon is an example. If you picked Rome, there is no max to the timeline you can be in. So that's what's interesting about the game.
Oh yeah, you're building your civilization
to withstand the test of time. So it's there is no fall of Rome and then done. So you can be ancient Rome with modern technology.
Yep.
In like the 21st century. So that's what's cool about it.
Yep. And there's a lot of cool things, a lot of cool puzzles, and like there's definitely a historical time period in the game and in the real world where Rome flourished, right? So you want to hit that historical time period in the game doing well because all of your powers benefit you during that time period for Rome.
Right.
So Rome is very good at expanding. For example. But one of the things I like is the historical stuff they give you. And this particular civilization, which I find interesting, is Teddy Roosevelt is your American leader.
Does he carry a big stick?
He does. He does carry a big stick. So the Americans tend to have most of their advantages in the modern age, right? And often their advantages might involve, especially in the more modern civilizations, tourism and culture, right? So culture is a weapon you can use in other countries. You can convert them to your culture. Right? So like, and the Americans win this way. They build Hollywood. They build statues, they build TV stations, and they broadcast, right? This is what they've Americanized the world. That's how Americans sometimes win these games. But this one, Civilization 6, they give you Teddy Roosevelt. And one of the things they added in this game and changed around a little bit is called amenities. And that's how you keep your people happy, amenities. So you create entertainment districts. Right. So the Americans are already good at that. But adding Teddy Roosevelt gives you bonuses on things like national parks and natural things of your world in play, right? So I see your face, and you and Joe is making a face here at me because it's an interesting, I think, statement in general about the way things are. As folks are coming up against this kind of natural thing, there's climate change.
You have to rake them.
You do have to rate them. See, Joe went the obvious way, right? So yeah, you have to rate them. So here is a game that is, and I'd love to go back, and I'm probably going to spend a little time going back and looking at the old versions of this and seeing what they said about each civilization historically. But here's a game that's 25, 30 years old, really old, powerful game that leverages history. And I don't think, I mean, maybe folks are talking about it, but they're taking the leaders. They're very careful and deliberate in what leaders they're picking to reflect the times in which we are playing the game. Right. Picking Teddy Roosevelt in the 80s would make no sense.
Right.
I mean, people are thinking that way. One other thing that's interesting about picking Teddy Roosevelt is that he was a trust buster. Look at our economy now. A lot of monopolies that need to maybe be looked at and busted, right? So you go in there and you read Teddy Roosevelt's sort of bio. You read about America during that time period, and you're learning a little bit more than maybe you would have gotten in school. Maybe you would have get from the media and things like that. And maybe that generation who grows up, hopefully the kids that are playing Civilization 6, and I hope it's not just 40-year-olds. I hope there are also 6-year-olds.
I'll tell you this.
It's on the Switch, so there's got to be a market somewhere out there for these kids.
There is, absolutely. So it's not just our age. I'm glad to say that I know some younger individuals that play RTSs and play strategy games. And Civilization with Civ 6 launching on the Switch, you're going to have it's kind of amazing. So Civilization always required a PC. Mm-hmm. So Civ 6 is kind of a whole new dynamic because it's always been a really powerful game to play, like it's because it requires some horsepower to kind of
real crunching.
It's number crunching. It's actual number crunching, not just graphical power. And they've launched Civ 6 since its initial launch on PC. It is on iPad. It is on iPhone 10 and 8 and up because it requires the power. But
I cannot buy a phone that powerful.
So you can have Civ 6 in your pocket, which makes sense because it's a touch screen and whatever. You could zoom in and do all that. So here we've got a game that required like time invested on mobile, but it's not a mobile game. But it's because you could pull it out and micromanage. That's it.
So what I'm imagining is I'm gonna pop out, play 4 turns, miss my fucking bus stop, get fired from my job. They're literally putting my kryptonite into a handheld device that I can carry over. I'm excited for the Switch one. When I do invest in that Switch,
So I'm excited to hear more on this just because you're going to make me want to play it. It's been on my list, but I don't know. Honestly, I knew people many years ago that played it. I have a specific coworker that plays it. And I might have to poke at him now that I'm going to pick it up. Now that I've got a Switch,
give it a try. We should play a multiplayer game.
Right? No, absolutely. I'll since you got it,
same team, friendly multiplayer game.
Friendly multiplayer. Me. I like co-op.
Me too.
So no, that's interesting. I'm excited for it. And
so I love it. I mean, if you have thoughts on this as well, please. I'd love to chat about it because I find it heartening that a historical game is providing this sort of historical context, and their next DLC is a little on the nose, right? It's about climate change. So I think the last time there was climate change in the game was Civ 4. So
fun fact for people that don't know about Civilization, and I mentioned that my favorite is Gandhi because I like some of his attitude. The reason is which is hilarious, and again we're going to talk about a little bit of lore of this game. There was a game-breaking bug in the old version of Civilization where it was an integer problem in the code where if you set the game too peaceful, it literally flipped it and made it
turned that 0 into a 1 or
turned that 0 into a 1 basically, and made it was a bug. And back in those days there was no patches, there was no internet to kind of fix that stuff. And so Gandhi, being the peaceful person that he is, would immediately become a nuke.
Most ravenous,
war-hungry person.
Immediately make demands and then nuke you when you said
nuke you, right? So he was all about the nukes, and so they fixed it later on. But people were like, "We kind of like that." It's the irony of Gandhi, being the peaceful person and being the first one to hit the nuke button. So that's still in the game.
Gandhi's still in the game.
Gandhi's still in the game, and he is still to this day still a nuke hungry individual.
Oh no, I think the current game I loaded up, Gandhi's in it, so I'll have to see how we get past
keep track of his nuclear.
So I'll probably bring it up again as I play it and I dig into it. I've only played like 5 or 6 civilizations, and there's a shit ton of them. So
right, absolutely. So since we're on the topic of history and games of our youth, today, as of filming today, marks the 20th anniversary or the 20th birthday of the Dreamcast.
I can't believe. Wait, only it's that young, really?
Right. Well, young, right? But at the same time, I can't even believe that it's been 20 years. And the Dreamcast. If you saw my post, I posted about it on our Instagram and. The Dreamcast holds a special near and dear part in my heart. It was one of the first consoles I bought as a young adult, and I say young adult because I was 17 when it launched, and I was on my way to adulthood, and it was one of those things where no longer mommy and daddy were buying consoles for me. I wanted it. Now, I bought it early. I bought it before it came out in the U.S. I bought the launch Japan version. The story goes
so legit. Were you wearing like a hipster outfit at the time?
Oh man, it was my mustache here. Look, it's interesting because we had a friend. My dad worked with a had a coworker, a young adult coworker as well. He must have been at least 10 plus years younger than my dad, and he was making my dad's kind of money and probably lived at home, and so he was like us in the sense that he bought things for himself and. He liked video games, so he had disposable income, and he would buy a lot of consoles and stuff from Japan. He was a big importer. So he had like a PlayStation 2 before it came out. He had the Japan version. He had PlayStation, etc. And I would always get to like check these out. Like, oh my God, here's a Neo Geo. I'm gonna play.
These games are like regionalized, right? So not only did you have to get
you have to you bought the console. You bought the Japanese version of the console. He had a Japanese Dreamcast, and so he bought it when it launched. And immediately after it launched, he was like, hey, my dad invited him over for some dinner, and he brought his console over, and he plugged in that Dreamcast, and I played Sonic Adventure. Now, you have to understand, if anyone's played that game, there's a specific level in the game where you're in a city at night, a lot of lens flares and helicopters coming at you, and then at one point, they're chasing after you, and you run down the side of a building. And it was gameplay, cinematic in style, but gameplay. And at that moment, that was to me the first uncanny valley moment for video games, where it was there was a crossover in my head. I mean, obviously, you look at the graphics now; they're
I know. I'm imagining our listeners going back and looking at this video, and be like, "What the heck is Joe talking
Right? What are you talking about?
It's like polygon garbage."
Blew my little fragile,
I believe it,
year-old mind to the point that I was like, "I need this system. How is this possible in a system?" The graphics were just that astronomically better than a PlayStation. That was the biggest.
Do you still have one?
I do. I do still have one, and I have a huge library of games for the Dreamcast. Of course you do. Absolutely huge. I sold everything I had. And in retrospect, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do because I lost a lot of good things. But, in hindsight as well, I did get to experience this. I sold everything I had and went to my import shop and bought one like a week later. That's traded in like $1,000 worth of stuff and was like, give me a Dreamcast. And they took it. And they gave me a Dreamcast. And from that day forward, I bought everything that import shop would get day one from Japan. So every major game that came out in Japan. So the interesting fact about this is the Dreamcast launched in 1998. So November 1998. And the Dreamcast launched in the US. Yeah, in Japan. And in the US, it launched in the infamous date of 9/9/99. That's the famous date that it launched. So it's a year apart, almost, give or take, on launch time. And so I had this console in January of 1999, and so I had it a full 9 months before everybody. And I remember my friends coming over and saying, "What the heck is this?" Like, this was the days before.
It had a weird-looking controller.
And it's 1999 here. We're talking about internet was not something that everyone had at their home. Not everyone, people didn't sit on Facebook or social media.
We were still surfing for porn on Netscape.
Right. It was like dial-up, AOL, that kind of thing. So here I had this console that no one even had heard of. Like, magazines were like, they hadn't even talked about it till like 2 months later in Electronic Gaming Monthly. They're like, here's this new Sega console, it's coming out, etc. And here it is. I had it, and the console's graphics were so intense that it had games that were on arcade systems that people were playing. So like Marvel vs. Capcom was one of the big ones that everyone.
Which was the one that everyone had for the Dreamcast, is what I remember.
Yeah. And I had it 8 months before everybody, and people were just like in droves. I mean, I had like 20 people at my mom would yell at them, "What are they doing in the house?" And
I'm imagining you guys playing on cardboard boxes because you sold all your stuff too.
I sold everything. It was magnificent. If you're not familiar with the Dreamcast, it was a weird system. It was the last system that's made. They bet the farm on this particular venture, and I
think it was fantastic and you can almost look at the case study of Dreamcast and Wii U, right? Like, there's almost
a carbon copy scenario,
ahead of its time. Weird controls, hard to put your head around as a gamer. It delivered on every front, and people look back at the Dreamcast as one of those systems that's like, people who loved games, they knew.
Yeah. The Dreamcast had, what was interesting about the Dreamcast was the memory card. The memory card was something that no one else did at the time. It was called the VMU, a visual memory unit, and it was a little cartridge, kind of a little memory card, the size of a memory card, but it had a gamepad on it. Had a directional pad and 2 buttons, and it had its own little mini games that would get downloaded.
It was the size of a memory card in 1999.
Right. So
it's just kind of it was almost the size of, if you have an Xbox One now, the battery pack you put in the back. That's how
much. Or a Tic Tac box.
Yeah, a Tic Tac box is a good size.
A box of the size of a Tic Tac box. This little screen with a little Tamagotchi looking screen on it. But the cool part was the controller had a cutout for it, so you'd slide the VMU in, and when you're playing certain games, a good example was you'd play some of the RPGs on it. You would have your party's health status on this little screen,
displayed on the little tiny screen.
It was, again, ahead of its time. It was giving you information on a second screen. Now we've got smartphones, and the DS has 2 screens. But here's something that was in 1999, 1998, and that had this kind of information on it. Another thing was this memory card. You pull it out, you take it with you in your pocket. You level up your little character that whatever game would give you. But if you wanted to trade, this is the days of trading save files or whatever. You could. They were keyed. So it was like 2 sides to the memory card, and so you would take another person's memory card and attach them together. And then they would go into like a link mode, and you could transfer game saves and files and stats.
Like what they do now with the Pokemons.
Right. With the Pokemons. It was like a link cable. And that, again, revolutionary, something that no one had done before, and here we go. The graphics on the system were better than anything that had happened at this point.
It could do more.
It could do more.
Could do more than a lot of other systems.
So the downfall of the Dreamcast was it launched first, and Sega learned or failed with the Sega Saturn, if you're not familiar, because they launched first before the Sony PlayStation. PlayStation launched and killed them. Then they went back to the drawing board, created the Dreamcast, again said, we're going to launch. They launched. They tried to rectify those mistakes. It didn't matter. Everyone was already waiting for the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 launched the following year, and yet again, just
it was a little bit more expensive. It was kind of a little wonky. I mean, again, I think it fit a weird. It just looked weird to a lot of gamers, and PlayStation seemed simple to them, right? It was just
PlayStation 2 was coming off of the ginormous hit that was the PlayStation. Remember, the PlayStation,
even I switched. I was a big Nintendo and Sega fan, and I switched to
the PlayStation. Catered to the age demographic that was growing up, and Nintendo stayed behind a little bit. They didn't move on with technology. They were on cartridges. Everyone was moving to CD based. In hindsight, that's not smart. We could talk about that another day. But again. Happy birthday, Dreamcast. 20 years.
20 years.
And we're going to touch on another topic on that since we're on that. Next week, or at least I think it's next week, the PlayStation Classic launches. And if you haven't read the news or anything, they are trying to jump on the popularity wagon that is the releasing of these small miniature consoles. So if you can't see on video, here's a Super Nintendo Classic. And this is a little console.
Joe just has it lying around in his office. Some people are stabbing each other in the streets for these Super Nintendos, and Joe's just, look at my...
So here's a Super Nintendo Classic, and it's simple. It's got an HDMI as opposed to red, green, blue, red, yellow, white cables. And
good.
It has 21 games preloaded on it, and you plug it in, and there you go. You get classic high definition
Super Nintendo games.
So the PlayStation Classic is doing the same thing. It's launching with 20 games. 20 games that I will not talk about at the moment, but I will say that the 20 games that were chosen were not very good. The outrage has been online that the 20 games that they chose were kind of half-assed is the best way to put it.
I wonder if it's because they couldn't get the rights quickly.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation about rights, but they chose Twisted Metal 2 versus Twisted Metal 1. They didn't put Gran Turismo on it. They put Final Fantasy 7 on it, which is great, but then they chose, there was just some bad choices in games and sequels that just didn't pan out. Though I wouldn't say that this is the best 20 games that you could put on the Sony PlayStation. The news
it's not even 20 games in the best 100 games.
Right. There's so many better games that should have come out. Like if you had a list of 100 games, you pick the top 20. These games would not be on the top 20. These games would be, a few of them would be in the top 20, but maybe only 5 of them would be on the top 20. The rest of them would be further down the list.
Gotcha. The PlayStation has a huge library. I'm really curious. Next week. I'm curious now. I'm gonna go check it out.
So you should check it out. But again, and we're going to talk about one of the controversies that we'll probably talk about next week when it finally launches, is the fact that they've made some mistakes. And this is, first off, they came out and said that, yes, the system cannot connect online, which is fine. Neither can that Nintendo. They will not be releasing any updates. There's no way to update or add more games to it. Obviously, it's a $99 product. You're not going to get any more out of it. The problem here is this. The review units have come out, and 9 out of the 20 games are the PAL versions of the games, aka the UK, the European versions of the games. What that does is, if you're not familiar with what old video standards, the US is NTSC, the UK is PAL. The US worked on a 60 frames a second frame rate video format. The UK worked on 50, which means that games played slower in the UK.
Okay.
There was a lot of games the frame rate was not good. Like, so they would take a game that was made in the US and then
50 FPS isn't bad.
No, but you know, when it's certain games, it really changed. Like, we're not talking about games now that run at like 60 frames a second and whatnot. These are games that were limited by the video capabilities of a system. We've now created a system that's high definition. There was no reason to choose the crippled version of the content.
I gotcha.
So 50% of the games
get the rights to.
Right. Yeah. So here we've got 50% of the games that now have problems on a system that can't get upgraded or changed. The mom and pop that buys this for their kid, because like, hey, this is the game that we played with, aren't going to notice it. But the collectors and the gamers that are going to spend the big chunk of money, they're not.
All the people of our age who've got the disposable income and are looking to rebuy a childhood are going to be disappointed.
They're disappointed. So that's a big no-no. We'll talk about it more next week when it launches, but we'll see where it goes, how the sales work on it. But if you're looking for one, go look up some reviews. The reviews have hit all the internet's places online today.
Cool.
And they're not looking very good. They're looking kind of mediocre. So
fair enough. That. So speaking of family stuff, right? Things we want to do with our family.
Right.
Have you been so Race the Sun? Have you been playing it on the Xbox? That was one of the Xbox Gold games.
Right. So I haven't picked it up on the Xbox. I know that I need to go sit down and download
free.
it.
Just go download it.
It's free. I will absolutely. I already own it on PlayStation. And you and I, we got to play it a few years back at PAX East many years ago before the Oculus launched.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic game to play. It's
soothing, it's relaxing.
It's the music is relaxing, it's soothing. It's what's the best way to describe this type of style of gameplay? It's almost like an endless runner.
Yep.
I guess kind of like was it Mine Run or whatever the
Temple Run, whatever those games.
Temple Run on iOS or any Android or whatever. It's like a mobile game, but it's graphical. You play a little you're like a little ship that is powered by the sun, and so the sun is setting in the background.
Mm-hmm. And you're trying to outrun it.
You're trying to outrun it to keep in the sunlight. If you hit the darkness catches up with you. You depower and you crash.
And a lot of neat things occur with shadows, right? So once the sun gets below the horizon line, right, so your shadows are now longer.
Yeah, so you're trying to stay out of the shadows.
You're trying to stay out of the shadows to keep the energy to keep going straight. Yeah. So there's a couple of boosts and things like that. But one of the nice things is that I was playing it one day, and my daughter comes in, and she's watching me play, and she wants to play, and now she loves it. I mean, she wants to play it every day, mainly to see the new map. So one of the things that I think is really cool, I mean, it's procedurally generated maps.
Right.
But Race the Sun puts out a new map every 24 hours. So it's not like you get a new map every time you play, which would be frustrating.
Right.
You can actually sit down and spend some time mastering these maps.
Yeah.
Which is something that my daughter is really enjoying, which I'm excited for, because this is one of the few games that I've seen her sit down and lose and lose and lose and lose. But keep trying, because she knows that she's learning the maps, and she'll get to region 2 and be like, Daddy, I got to region 2. It's amazing. Oh my God. And she'll stop it. Yeah. So she's really, it's really exciting for me, because like I remember that feeling when I was a kid and I finally got things started coming together.
Has she gone through any of the warps, the deep space warps where it takes you into
so she hasn't been able to contain her excitement when she gets to region 2. So oftentimes she gets to region 2 and crashes pretty quickly.
Right.
And region 2 is where the warps occur. But she's watched me play, and if she sees one on the corner of the map, she says, Daddy, you need to crash so we can go back and try to get that warp. And of course I'm like, all right, do you remember how to get back? So like, let's go. So because it's got quick turnaround, so you got to get to the region, then you go and you can find it. So she loves it when I hit the warps, and she gets really excited for them.
That's
extremely disappointed when I do not get to the warps.
That's an interesting game to give them. I hadn't thought about sitting them down to play that.
Real simple, real soothing music, no violence, no plot, nothing to follow. All they have to do is move left and right, and occasionally if they pick up the jumps, they can do the jumps, and pick up the blues. And it's challenging enough because you speed up and you slow down. That she's having a grand old time with it.
So since he talks about that this is a game that's free for this month on Xbox. Live Gold, Games with Gold. If you don't have a Gold membership, it's a free game to download this month. One of the other wonderful benefits that the Xbox has given us, and again, Xbox is in second place this time around when it comes down to the console wars. At least that's what they say. But as a gamer, if you're following along, they're considered second place. But because of that, Microsoft has been a little humble in their givings, and it's been good for the gamer. And one of the services that they have provided is something called Game Pass, which it's $10 a month, like Netflix. And one of the things that they provide is kind of like an unlimited amount of games. So every month they add new games to this Netflix of gaming. And it's full versions of specific games, even new games that are coming out. That's been their big incentive at the moment, is games that are launching that day. It's coming out on Xbox Game Pass, and it's keeping a steady revenue flow for them. So you pay $60 a year for Xbox Live, and then you pay another $10 a month for
$180.
Oh yeah, it's a ton of money, and I pay for it because that's 2
AAA games a year, so it's not
too bad. It really isn't. And one of the games that my kiddo, and I say this with love, because if you've got kids, there's a lot of good games on there, and a lot of good, like most of the Lego games are on there.
It's a good back catalog,
It's a good back catalog, so it's a good way to download a bunch of games for your kid to let them play
$10
for $10. And one of them that is a fantastic game that I recommend for your kid is Super Lucky Tail.
Super Lucky Tail.
Lucky's with an S, Tail, and gotcha. It's a platformer in the same way that a Mario game or whatnot, and it's a first title Microsoft game. It's involved a little fox named Lucky, and it's a fantastic kind of a 3D platformer, and very cute, very soothing. It is a Nintendo game, the best way I could put it. It is a Mario game without Mario,
Simple controls, 2 buttons.
Simple controls. Perfect. Move, jump. So download it. Let them play it. It's fantastic. If you don't have Game Pass, you can find it on sale. Usually, I've seen it as low as $15, give or take. So
I know you got the Game Pass. I have not picked it up, and it's because I own and play still Division.
Right.
And I've read some complaints that when you undo your Game Pass, you lose access to games you've actually owned already. So like my buddy who plays with us, he owned Division. He played Division for probably a year and a half with us. He picked up the Game Pass and then canceled his Game Pass, and they wouldn't let him play Division. He actually had to go to Xbox and complain to them and send emails, and they had to authorize, because what it does is it Game Pass replaces the licenses you have
for the games that are on Game Pass with the Game Pass license, which it shouldn't do.
I agree. And it's been an ongoing problem with Game Pass, and they just have not fixed it because I guess it's not a big enough problem, but there's enough noise that I'm just like, you know what? I like the idea, but again, I also like, I mean, who owns anything anymore? But I own these physical copies of the games. I'd be very upset if suddenly my physical access.
Right. No, sure. Absolutely. It is definitely a good way. For example, if you own the physical copy, I don't know if you do.
I do.
It's if you're going to pay for the Game Pass for all the other games anyway, it is a quick way for a game like Division to become the digital copy. So you then no longer have to pop that disc in.
I bought the original physical copy when it first came out, and then I think Division dropped in price, and I just wound up buying the digital so I didn't have to get up off my ass.
Oh God, we're getting old. Absolutely.
I'm like, I don't want to play Race for the Galaxy.
So how many times have you done that? Do you do that often now? Are you buying digital copies because of that?
No. I do it. I either buy the digital or the physical, but there are like 1 or 2 games where I've had to do that with just because I was lazy.
So have you bought? And I'm only saying this because I'm projecting, right? Sure. Have you bought a game digitally for more money, knowing that the physical copy was a little less expensive, but just because you don't want to have to get up and put that disc back in?
Yes.
Yes. It's funny how they do that. It's funny how that works out. The digital copy being like a full price, but knowing that the physical copy is maybe $40, but I'll pay the extra $20 just so they don't have to get up and put that dang disc in every time.
Plus it's right there. I don't have to go to Best Buy. I don't have to.
Right.
It's horrible, but I'm just like, it's right there, and I literally don't even have to get up to buy it. This is kind of nice.
Right. Just like, bloop, bloop, bloop.
I mean, we all remember going to Electronics Boutique and searching to the computer game shelves for our game and coming back home, but I don't do that anymore. That's crazy.
So we're going to talk on another game real quick. We're not going to talk about a game. We're going to talk about another thing about our kids, because I think this is interesting. Over the holiday, right before the holiday, actually, She-Ra, Princess of Power, launched on
Princesses.
That's right. That's right. Of Power, and I'm only going to talk about this a little bit. Before it came out, there's a lot of news online, and it's an all-woman run production, which is phenomenal, as it should be. It's splendid. Another thing, though, is every time a trailer would launch, I'd hop on, and of course I went into the comments, and people were like, this looks too Steven Universe-y in the sense that the art where's the She-Ra that I grew up with? And I was like, what do you guys think about? Shut up.
You haven't thought about She-Ra in years.
I know. Yeah, right. So it launched, and I've got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I knew it had launched. My kiddo was eating dinner. He had his iPad in front of him. We were just having like a simple dinner, like just with TV, whatever. And he had his iPad, and I was letting him watch something. And I saw he was putting on an episode of something that I was like, I'm done. Watch something else. And I took it off, and I said, hey, look, She-Ra's on. And he's like, no, I don't want to watch that. That's for girls. And I was like, and immediately I was like, ugh! I felt that like kick in the chest, and I'm like,
I'm not raising my kid right.
Well, right. Well, so that was the interesting part, because we've never done anything like that. I mean, if you know me, Oliver, my youngest, this is the kiddo that is long hair, flowing locks,
He's beautiful.
I mean, he's a beautiful kid. I mean, he like suns himself with his rainbow shirt and his rainbow tights. Like there's, I'm
teasing.
No, totally. I mean, I have nothing. I don't believe in that whole like, oh, he's got to wear blue and red and military and football shirts. I've never been that way. I mean, as superhero-esque as I am, I believe my kiddo can choose whatever he wants, and it's one of the most progressive things about me in the sense that if my kiddo decides when he's old enough that he says that, Dad, I'm gay, I'm going to be like, cool, rock on, power to you. I mean,
I don't need to know your sex life.
I don't need to know your sex life. Rock on. It doesn't bother me. And so that being said, I don't believe a 4-year-old can choose his sexuality just because he likes rainbows and unicorns. So
controversial topic. We'll talk about it next time.
Yeah, it'll be a whole topic one day. But
we're struggling as two men raised in a different world.
Right.
I will fully admit that I read a lot about this, and I have to talk it through with my wife and read more. And really, because it's difficult. It's difficult concepts to understand fully and also be accepting of it. One of the things I do in my D&D games is I try to standardize my pronouns until we know for sure who's what, right?
A good example to this is in your game when I was playing it. One of the first rules that we set up was we had what's called an X card.
Yeah.
It was just a note with an X on it, and if anyone ever got onto a topic that was sensitive or just something that you didn't want to talk about, or it was just offensive in some way, you would just tap the X card. And that would give the signal to the rest of the table that we should just drop the subject and move on.
Everyone would all agree to close the scene and end it, right? So that's yep.
So that way there wasn't any weird like sexuality things and going on where someone was
we didn't want to trigger anyone in the parlance of the time.
Right. And that's how it should be. It's an inclusive, safe space and all that kind of stuff. So again,
we should talk about that because that's my buddy John Stav's invention of Sabalopoulos, and he's been taking it to conventions, and he does a lot of good work with that.
Oh man, yeah. So if you know the person that quote invented that, we should talk about that. So we'll talk about it. And again, X card. If anyone knows about it, it's just a simple rule.
A lot of controversy if you read the comments about the X cards, right? People are even offended at the very idea you'd create a safe space for people to play games. I know you want to roll your eyes, but anyway, She-Ra, Prince
of Power, and again, it's all come together because again, here's a powerful female character, She-Ra. Now, the history of She-Ra is obviously kind of weird because She-Ra, it's wonky, right? So here is a character of the character of He-Man, if you don't remember, was created, big, muscular, very male-centric masculinity.
Designed to sell toys.
And if you don't know the history on it, you should go watch The Toys That Changed the World on Netflix.
Also on Netflix.
Great episode on He-Man. But She-Ra was created because they were trying to corner the female market. They were like, hey, little girls, we want to sell to them, but we can't seem to break through. Let's create his long-lost sister. And so they created She-Ra, which is literally a carbon copy of He-Man just as a girl.
It was a weird, slightly different plot, but it was,
But slightly different, slightly the same. So they took this concept that was dead. Let's just be real here. No one cared about She-Ra. And they've really redone it. So again, I was about to put it on, and my kiddo was like, it's for girls. We put it on. He watched one episode, and then we were like, do you want to watch it? No. We watched the next episode. And then so we watched 2 episodes. We were done with dinner. And he walked away. No, I don't want to watch it anymore. It's for girls. And I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, you liked it. And my older son walked up behind us and watched the second episode and was like, what is this? This is awesome. And so he liked it. Next thing you know, it's bath time. And he is in the tub cosplaying as She-Ra. Singing
good for her.
So is he good for? Yeah. So that said, again, now he quotes it. He's like, by the
honor of Grayskull.
Grayskull is walking around saying it. I'm like, I love it.
We watched it together as a family, right? And our often anything. She's already a teenager, and anything we suggest she watches, she's like, no, I'd rather watch Paw Patrol or some stupid show that she's already watched too much of. So we put it on, like we forced her to watch it, and she was like, what's going on? What is this amazing thing? And then the second, I mean, spoiler alert for anyone who's watched it. In the second episode, there's the big transformation. So everyone remembers, if you remember He-Man and She-Ra, they put their sword up and boom, crazy stuff happens. That scene when she transforms and her hair just, that blonde hair fills the screen. Every time I see it, I get chills because I love the imagery of it. I love the artwork of it.
Right.
But my kid loves it. I mean, she looks at it. She looks at me because she knows I'm in love with it, and we just have this great family moment where we're all enjoying. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, love it.
I was so excited that she loved it so much. And here's the weird thing about living in today's world. I immediately went online to see if I could find toys, right? Because this is my thought process, right? Here's a cartoon that's great. There's got to be toys. San Diego Comic-Con had 2 dolls that they released there, and they're going for a ridiculous amount of money online.
Big, angry, controversial thing. They're like, why would no one pick this up and make the toys for this? Like, this is like leaving money on the table. And it's because they're afraid to put out a big market, a big toy line to a.
It's so weird that our business model is still, with 3D printers and all the technology we have, that they still need a big toy line, right? Like, you just need small runs of some She-Ra toys for dads and moms and families to buy. Because I say moms specifically because my wife has really intensely fond memories of watching She-Ra. Like, she had representation, very important concept that we didn't talk about back then in the 80s, on the screen. And she loved She-Ra. She kind of loved Gem and the Holograms, right? These cartoons from back in the day that showed her doing amazing action things. And she remembered She remembered it way better than me. Like, she was a nerd about She-Ra from back then. Don't tell her I said this.
So here's a funny thing about that is I always thought, and I've got a friend of mine. His name is Chris, and I'm going to link him to this episode just because I'm going to talk about him. His name is he goes by Horde. That's his handle, and it's because of
the enemy on.
And let's be real here, Hordak. While Skeletor is phenomenal but funny, Hordak was insanely more scary and a way better villain than Skeletor was. So anyone can like He-Man all they want, but the Horde in Hordak was way scarier.
Yeah, they would decimate environments and destroy whole civilizations and literally commit genocide. Cartoon-wise.
Cartoon-wise, they were genocide.
Devastate whole villages. And they give you some taste of that in She-Ra, Princesses of Power. And again, controversial.
It's been modernized. But
yeah, it's been modernized. Controversial statement. I like it 1,000 times better than My Little Pony. Friendship is Magic, just way better. It's smarter, and it clearly shows its roots in the Steven Universe style of inclusion and family discussion and friendship. But it's smarter, it's more clever. The male characters had me rolling on the floor laughing. It is brilliant, and I think everyone should watch it so that Netflix gets a season 2, and I get some toys for my daughter next Christmas. That's really what I want to do.
So. 2 things. One, My Little Pony was kind of the precursor to a lot of this. While you say you don't like it, but I will say that it was one of the shows that, while it was targeted towards girls, it developed a whole subculture, like we're going to call it the brony scenario, but which again I have no problem with because
also people loved it.
Yeah, they loved it, and I thought it was a good, wholesome cartoon.
Yes,
that was exciting. That had like a running story and everything. So I'm a fan of it for other reasons, not just because I love.
I'm not saying I wasn't a fan of it, but if you're going to take franchises from the '80s and reboot them to today, I thought She-Ra was a much better, more engaging show for me.
Right. I think My Little Pony is going to get its props as being that front runner for, look, here's a cartoon that was meant for girls. We can make it successful. We can make it all inclusive, and we can make it fun for the whole family. And
that's great. And I hope She-Ra does more of it. I hope there's more of it because it's fantastic. I hope they. You know what would be awesome? They give this crew who made She-Ra He-Man.
So I like that you went around to that because my oldest son and my youngest son devoured She-Ra, and they want more. But of course, Netflix again, this is up here.
You might like
the numbers, the dynamic. All of a sudden,
so much beautiful data.
I come back from Denver last week, and my son is sitting there on the couch watching a show, and I'm like, I hear from the background, I hear the Skeletor sound. I'm like, what the? By the power of Grayskull. And he's like, I told my kid, I was like, He-Man. I'm like, it happened. And I'm like,
Nerd Dad, Chivo.
Oh, Chivo. I was like, Dad, I love He-Man. He's really cool. Like, do you like He-Man, Dad? And I'm like, yes, son.
I do very much. Let's watch it together.
I was just like, but I didn't push it. I didn't want to be like, I think it's cool too, because then they're like, oh, you think it's cool? I'm going to want to move on to something else.
I'll turn it off and watch a YouTube guy.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's so good. It's but they organically / Netflix caused it probably, but they jumped right on He-Man. And
we need to coin a term for that. They got Netflix. They got mechanically moved to an older show.
So good. But now...
Where do we find those toys?
Well, fun fact is they just released a whole new line of like, you know how the He-Man toys were big and beefy? They've now got a whole line of toys like that. Funko jumped on it, and they're making like Thundercats and He-Man and all of that style. So they're all the same size, same style of that. I'll link it in the notes about it, but I think it's fun. Like that's awesome. Guys, they're kind of playing on the fact that they were like overly beefy. So
I love it. So She-Ra, watch it.
Go watch it, please.
We're a little over time, right? So
we are.
One more thing, and this is all on me. This is all on me, Joe. I made a prediction before Thanksgiving week that they would not reduce the price on Fallout 76, and literally
the next day,
4 hours later, the prices were dropped significantly. Like it wasn't like a 10% like Red Dead Redemption 2. It was like 50%. So
$34 is what I saw it at, and not only was it dropped like in one place, like here's a Target exclusive, or it was Amazon, Target, Microsoft Online Store, and PlayStation Online Store all dropped to the $30 range. Here's a game that launched at $59.99 with multiple collector editions ranging in the $80 plus. All dropped in that big price range, percentage-wise. So you could buy the 1776 to the Centennial Edition for the price of the game. It was like $50 for that version, which anyone who paid the full $60. I mean, if you haven't
got to play it for a full week before the price dropped.
And there are refunds galore.
Is there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, people were getting refunds and price adjustments everywhere.
It's interesting because I feel like you could buy it, install it, wait for the full new game to patch over it, and then return it and still have the amount of data you already got. It's enormous, right? So you make enough predictions, you're going to get one wrong. All right, that's what I'm going to say. I made a lot of predictions. There's probably a few more that I've gotten wrong, but that one I got really wrong. Like literally a day later, I was wrong. So
shout out to one of our friends, Jordan. He mentions one of his quick comments on it was he thinks this game will be just like Sea of Thieves. And I kind of agree with him. If you're not familiar, Sea of Thieves is a multiplayer game that's on Xbox, which is, again, it's included in Game Pass. So if you get that, you can get the game. But you get the game, and it's a pirate kind of game, kind of like Fallout, where you're running around the
wasn't quite there at launch, but it's starting to get more.
Patched it and fixed it and gotten better and better and better, and it's developing a fan base now. And I think that's where basically what we're saying is Sea of Thieves should have launched today as opposed to when it did, and Fallout should have launched next year as opposed to now, because all the time it's just beta. This is all early access. People that paid $60.
I wonder if this business model works until you save it until it's perfect, or you launch it and improve it as you go to make sure you built and grab the community before they go off to the next big thing. I mean, we'll have to see the numbers. So we're going to wrap it up here, right?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
I just want to mention one more time, heretofore, we're going to do some closeout music from
absolutely. Probably starting right about now.
Yeah. Right. We're based out of Central New York. Like us, love us, share us. Check out the links we put up. Come and talk to us. Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Have a good one, guys. Follow, subscribe.
Crisis.